Honestly, nung binigay ito sa akin ni Ix, I said yes before even looking into the topic. As I was reading the topic, honestly, okay, um, on this topic of work, I wasn't sure kung bakit ako. During the first few years of my professional career, kinukwento nga kanina sa kapatid ko, yung longest tenure ko is like 7 months. It's either pero usually mga 4 months lang yun. 4 months, 4 months, 7 months, 4 months. So it's either I got fired or umalis ako. So when I was thinking about this topic, I felt like there were more accomplished people, who can be standing here. I'm thinking Pastor Ikoy, Chevron, Pastor JP, Rockwell, even Pastor Peter. Even my sister, who holds a senior position in Chowking, I think she's more qualified than I am. So I was asking the Lord, Lord, bakit ako nandito? And I'm not an expert at work. I don't have a stellar resume, and I'm just an ordinary church staff. And what the Lord revealed to me is, I think that's the point. The point is so that God will be magnified in this ordinary person's life. So tonight's topic is on success and work. And we'll examine the parable of the talents. Okay? Merong 2 negative approaches to work. First is idolatry. Idolatry, it says, all my work is who I am. Lahat ng joy ko, lahat ng satisfaction ko, lahat ng saya ko sa buhay, nahanap ko sa trabaho. Okay, that's idolatry. Ang problema dun is what happens when you lose your job. Second is, for lack of a better term, the immorality of work. Meaning, wala akong pakialam sa trabaho. When I'm at work, I'm just thinking of vacation. I don't give my best. Sobra lang akong, petics lang. And I just can't wait for the next weekend. So yun yung immorality of work, which doesn't respect the sacredness of work. So all of us here, we fall into those 2 categories, or maybe somewhere in between. So ang prayer ko tonight is, I pray that the Lord will deposit something in your hearts so that you do not leave this place empty-handed. Okay? Let's begin. So let me give to you the context of this parable. Okay, so to understand this parable, the parable of the talents, you have to read Matthew 24 and 25. Okay, so during this time when Jesus was sharing this, it was 3 days before the cross. So 3 days na lang, papakuin na siya sa cross. Okay, this was before the Last Supper. Okay, they were at the Mount of Olives. And Jesus predicts the destruction of the temple, which happened 40 years after that. So yung disciples niya asked him 2 questions. When will this happen? And when will the end of the age be? Ang sagot ni Jesus sa kanila, hindi niya alam. Okay? He doesn't tell them when, but he tells them how it will happen. And he commands them to be ready for his coming. Okay? And he gives them 2 parables in Matthew 25. The 10 virgins, which talks about being watchful, and he gives the parable of the talents, which says, while watching or while waiting for God to return, work on what he has called us to do. And then he closes with a story about Judgment Day, the sheep and the goats. So now, you may be wondering, what has this got to do with success? Answer is everything. Everything. Bakit? Because this Jesus, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, who is coming again soon, he is the only voice, he is the only authority when it comes to success. He gets to define what success is, and in the end, only he gets to determine kung sinong maging successful or hindi. So let's review our definition of success. I got this from Pastor Peter. Sabi niya, true success is becoming all that God wants you to be and doing all that He wants you to do and hearing Him say, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master. So in this session, we will talk about success in the area of work. So let me give another context before I start the parable. So some info on slaves. Slaves back then, they were viewed not as persons, but as property. Okay, pag mamayari sila, gamit sila. They were obligated to obey their master. They're dependent on their master for provisions, and their masters, they were allowed to beat their slaves. If they were displeased with them, pwede nilang gulpihin, and pwede nilang ibalik sa slave market. So I want you to have that frame of mind as we read this parable. So parable of the talents, Matthew 25, 13 to 30. So can I ask, the guys, you read the first verse, and then the ladies read the next, and then the guys again. Palitan lang, and then sa last, sa verse 30, sabay-sabay tayo. Okay ba yan? Okay, 1, 2, 3, guys, go. Came up and brought 5 talents, saying, Master, are you entrusted? Enter into the joy of your master. Also the one who received the 2 talents came up and said, gained 2 more talents. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful. Wicked, lazy slave. Everywhere scattered, no seed. Receive my money back with interest. And he will have an abundance. Sabay-sabay. The worthless slave into the outer darkness. Let's pray. Father, not by might nor by power, but by your Spirit. So Lord, would you speak to us, your servants, open our hearts that we may hear from you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, what this parable is not about. It's not about working for God so that you don't go to hell. It's not about that, okay? It's not about earning salvation. It's not about earning salvation. It's not about investments. Okay, so don't use this kung simula kayo magnegosyo. Not about condoning slavery. Okay, what is this about? It's about stewardship. It's about faithfulness to what God has entrusted to us. It's about preparing for the master's return. Okay, got it? Stewardship, let's define it. Okay, stewardship, sabi sa Merriam-Webster, is the conducting, supervising, or managing of something, especially the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Okay, so in short, it's not yours. Okay, you're not the owner. It's been entrusted to you. Okay, so first point, overcome the fear of failure. And the one also who had received the one talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you didn't sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. So let's start with his wicked slave. What was his reasons for not working on what's been entrusted to him? So sabi niya, you're a hard man. You're an unjust man. You're an exploitative man. So iniisip niya, whatever I gain, kahit anong hirap ang gagawin ko, you will never be pleased. So that was his mindset. So he believed that there was nothing he could do with one talent. Okay, talent back then, it's a measure of currency. And one talent is worth 20 years of sueldo. Okay, 20 years of wages. Okay, can you imagine kung gaano karami yun? So he says he was afraid. He was afraid. It could be fear of losing the money. Natakot siya, sobrang laki. It could be fear that he doesn't have what it takes to do business. That's why he chose to do nothing. But we all know that he was just making an excuse. So anong sabi ng master sa kanya? Sabi ng master sa kanya, you wicked, lazy slave. And as I was thinking about this, you know, when you look at this, pag inisip mo, but bakit wicked? Hindi naman niya tinakbo yung talent eh. Diba? Hindi naman niya ninakaw eh. In fact, sinoli niya nga eh. He returned it. Bakit siya wicked? Naisip niyo ba yan? So bakit wicked? He was wicked because of this. Because he had the wrong view of the master. He had the wrong view of the master. And being a slave who was supposed to look after his master's interests, he didn't care about his master's assets. Wala siyang pakialam. Was the master really a hard man? Was he? Was he really unjust? Was he really abusive? Think about that. You know that phrase, see, you have what is yours? This phrase is used in Jewish transactions to mean, wala na ako dyan, ah. I'm not responsible for that anymore. So ganun yung attitude ng servant na to. Ito na yung pera mo. Wala na ako dyan. I'm not responsible for that anymore. So that's what he was saying. So makita nyo talaga na he wasn't really after his master's interest. Wala siyang pakialam. Okay? So imagine this. Imagine this. One talent is worth 20 years of wages. Okay? 20 years of wages. Sobrang laking pera nun. Okay? 20 years of wages. Back then, alam ko wala pang paper bills. Okay, wala pang paper bills. So think about this. The effort in digging, because that was the safest way back then. Wala pang bangko nun eh. So what they did back then was to dig and keep their prized possessions under the ground. Imagine this. The effort in digging to put 20 years of wages. Okay, pwedeng gold, pwedeng silver to. 20 years of wages. Can you imagine kung gaano kalaking effort nun? Compared to just going to the bankers. Naisip niyo ba yan? Di ba mas mahirap pang maghukay kaysa pumunta na lang sa bankers? So this really shows na, he didn't really care about his master. And think about this. If he wasn't doing the master's work, then what was he doing all this time that the master is away? Okay, think about that. You see, it wasn't really about having more talents. Kasi di ba yun yung complaint niya eh. It wasn't really about having more talents. Because even if he had 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 talents more, it wouldn't make a difference. He would have done the same thing. It was a character issue. Wala siyang pakialam sa master niya. He had the wrong view of his master. Now, let's talk about the fear of failure. As we have redefined success, we also need to redefine failure. Failure is not terminal, okay? It's not the end. It's never the end. All failures are redemptive. Okay, redemptive, ibig sabihin, it can be used for something good. It can be bought back and used for something good. All failures are redemptive. And last, a lot of people have learned much from their failures more than their successes. Do you agree with that? So the problem is, if we have this fear of failure, okay, ang gagawin natin is we won't even try. Kasi baka mapahiya tayo if we go over. And we don't want to be criticized because that feels bad. And magiging pangit yung reputation natin sa ibang tao. So ang mangyayari is if you have that fear of failure, you'll do just enough. You'll do just enough. Pero oftentimes, the result could be just mediocre or just respectable. 2 weeks ago, I was at the leadership conference in Indonesia. I was assigned as a speaker care. As a speaker care or slash PA ni Pastor Edmund Chan and Pastor Peter Tanchi, sabay. Okay? It's doable, but I will not advise it. Okay, so it was my first time to do it. It was my first time to be speaker care, and this was for 3 days. 3 days, can you imagine? Sabay sila, 3 days. It was my first time to do it. Tatawa si Paul. It was my first time to do it, and I had much to learn. So nung first night, I remember I made a mistake with Pastor Edmund, and he was kind enough to give me feedback. So, okay lang ba sa inyo? I read to you my letter to my supervisor after that incident, kung ano yung natutunan ko. Okay lang ba yan? Basahin ko sa inyo. So I want you to listen so that you can learn from my mistake. Okay, basahin ko. Hello, Pastor Blank. My mindset coming into this task of being speaker care for both Pastor Edmund and Pastor Peter was simply don't mess this up. I was hesitant to do it for Pastor Peter, let alone for both. I don't like details. It is not my strong suit. This was also the first time I did speaker care for an IDMC conference. But I thought the challenge would be good for growth, and so, in faith, I accepted. I realized my mindset was not a good one to have. It prevented me from anticipating a lot of things that could go wrong and anticipating how things could have been done better, because I was just on survival mode. So deep inside, I wanted to do a good job by not messing up so that I'll have a good reputation with the speakers and with the team. So Friday night during Plenary 3, I left Pastor Edmund inside the speaker's room to attend to my own needs kasi gutom na ako nun eh. In my head, he was about to start anyway, and so I thought it was okay to leave him there alone in the room. Turns out, the program didn't go as planned. The praise and worship extended, and I didn't know that there was a testimony after the praise and worship. I should have double-checked, but I didn't. It also didn't cross my mind that Pastor Edmund was keeping a tight schedule, but I should have. After the session, during the ride back to the hotel, Pastor Edmund gave me a firm but loving feedback. And it was only then that I realized all the things that I should have done right, but didn't, because I had the wrong mindset. So I realized that not being detailed is not an excuse to grow. Honestly, it was painful. You should have seen me that night. It was painful for me to hear his feedback. I felt like I did a poor job. Parang wala nang ginawang tama. But Pastor Edmund was gracious enough to point out to me the difference between I did a poor job versus I could have done it better. Very encouraging. He mentioned a few things I should improve on. First is clarity. I should have cleared the schedule with the program team before each session and not be content with the initial agreement because things can change and schedules get delayed. If I'm clear with the timing, the speakers can plan better their schedules. This also applies with the transport arrangement. Second is capacity. I should have committed the schedule and the details to memory. This is the difference between being good and being excellent. Increasing my capacity will allow me to anticipate things and not panic when something goes wrong. I will also be able to do a good job despite unfavorable circumstances. Third is courage. Courage is needed to face the things that I do not like to face. I'm not detailed or I don't want to offend people. These are some scripts I've been holding onto in my head that have led me to do a mediocre job. I used to be aggressive in a negative way, and my mindset at work was, get the job done at all costs. But it caused friction in my previous relationships here in CCF with my colleagues. And when I realized my wrong, I shifted to the extreme and became Mr. Nice Guy. I didn't want to risk offending people. So the problem with this is that I will only get the job done if circumstances are favorable. Pastor Edmund explained to me that the opposite of being aggressive is not being nice or gentle, but being assertive in a positive way. He gave the example of our colleague who can be pushy, but at the same time not disrespectful. She gets the job done, she's meticulous and rested at the same time. So courage is not just admitting my shortcomings, but also taking steps to grow, which is the harder part. Pastor Edmund also gave me some practical tips on being a PA. Don't think like a PA, but think like a speaker. I represent the speaker to the people. If I'm not sure, ask. Anticipate last-minute changes. Don't leave the speaker behind until the end. Anticipate needs and find a balance between being meticulous with details, being pushy, being rested, and kind, all at the same time. Last Wednesday, two Wednesdays ago, when I met with the Indonesian organizing team, I prayed for them. I pray that they not be afraid of failure because all failures are redemptive, because most of them were afraid. Most of them were first time doing the conference. It's funny how God allowed this very failure to happen to me. Though honestly, the feedback stung, I'm genuinely grateful that God turned my mistake to a free mentoring session with Pastor Edmund. Immediately, I applied committing Pastor Peter's schedule to memory, and he was impressed that I knew all the details, even without looking at his schedule. This is definitely something I would not have learned in seminary. Praise the Lord. And so, thank you. So I want to show you what Pastor Ed, he replied to that email. Nagulat nga ako eh. So ito yung sabi niya. Sabi niya, "Hi Clevy, what you've shared below is precious. I'm proud of you that you've learned and did it right with Pastor Peter Tanchi. Well done. Two things. Now that you've learned it, and ito yung value ng failure, learning from your failures or failures being redemptive. When you've learned from your failure, keep at it until it becomes second nature." And then sabi niya, then you don't have to live with those poor inner script again. And please share these precious lessons with others so that they can also learn vicariously from you. So I'm just being obedient to him. Okay, so my advice to you, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. It's okay to fail. Okay, give yourselves permission to fail. But having said that, wag niyo naman sadyain. Wag niyo naman sadyain. Be more afraid of failing again and again without ever learning. My dad's here. Ang turo niya sa akin, ang failure, hindi siya sayang when you've learned something from it. And that is so true. Okay, so that's the first one. Overcome the fear of failure. Pangalawa, shift from race to praise. We move now from the wicked slave to the two faithful slaves. The one who had received 5 talents came up and brought 5 talents more, saying, "Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I've gained 5 more talents." And then the 2 talents guy also came to his master. Sabi niya, "Master, you entrusted 2 talents to me. See, I've gained 2 more talents." And what was the master's commendation to them both? Magkaiba ba? Was it different? Pareho, di ba? Pareho. Ito sabi ng master nila, "Well done, good and faithful slave." Sinabi niya yun sa 5 talents, sinabi niya yun sa 2 talents. "You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master." The Master's commendation says a lot about what really matters. So what do we get from this? We get from this is it's not about who has the most talents. It's not about who has the most talents or who has the best talents. It's not about that. It's not about competition. It's about faithfulness to what God has entrusted to each one of us. So let's be careful of the mindset na, sana yung gifts ni Ikoy nasa akin, or sana yung gifts ni Paul nasa akin. I wish I had more money, or I wish nandito ako sa trabahong ito, sana ito yung position ko, o sana I was born into this family. The problem with this mindset is we neglect what God has given us. And we take that for granted. Each of us has at least one talent. Okay, and talent in today's context is more than just money. More than just money. It is everything that the Lord has entrusted to us. What are those things? Time, talents, natural abilities, money, resources, opportunities, connections, influence. Okay, all these things the Lord has entrusted to us. So don't put it to waste. Don't put it to waste. Now, let me talk about rewards before we get to the next point. Ito mo sabi niya dito, for to everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. So yes, there will be divine opportunities when Jesus comes again. In heaven, there is work. Okay, hindi lang tayo kakanta doon forever. There is work. And there is divine delight waiting for the faithful slave when the master arrives. But I believe there are also rewards in the here and now that as we are faithful to God, merong rewards yun. Okay, so more than just work, which doesn't sound very enticing. Parang sinabi mong, if you're faithful with work, then bibigyan ka ng mas maraming trabaho. Hindi lang siya ganun. Okay? So the reward for faithfulness is not just more work, but more capacity for work. Okay? Capacity is defined as the maximum amount that something can contain. So ibig sabihin, you can take in more. You can do more. Kasi na-increase na yung capacity mo. What else? The ability or power to do, experience, or understand something. Ibig sabihin, not only can you take in more, you can do all these things well and excellently. You got it? Yan ang reward ng faithfulness kay God. So let me just share just a quick, my personal journey in this speaking, teaching ministry. I never wanted to be a small group leader. I never wanted to be a teacher. So, okay na ako na, every now and then, I would share in our small group back in 2005 or 2004. Okay na ako dun. But being responsible for another person's life, that's not me. And if you knew me, I had a terrible case of fear of public speaking. I don't like, speaking in front. Sobrang natatakot. Every time. Sobrang kinakabahan. In fact, I'll show you a picture. Okay na ako. Na bus marshal lang. Okay na ako. This was a photo back in 2005. Can you imagine kung gaano nakatagal yan? Okay, 13 years ago, bus marshal mates kami ni Ikoy. Okay, pero wala pa ako sa group niya nun. Okay, so the thought of public speaking or speaking in a small group was offensive to me. It was offensive. Ayoko talaga siya. In fact, ayoko nga may English speaking sa D-group ko nun eh. So I didn't want it. Okay? So, but the Lord, the Lord just kept giving opportunities upon opportunities for me to grow in this area. So even if I was scared, I just went ahead. And, many times I fumbled, I failed, but, I just went ahead and stepped out in faith. I shared with you si Mika dun sa Sunday school namin. When I was starting in Sunday school, hindi ako agad nagtuturo. Yung unang ministry ko with Sunday school, I was just stacking chairs for the first year. Stacking chairs and then bringing kids, puntang toilet, hintayin ko sila lumabas, tapos babalik ko sila sa classroom. Yun lang yung trabaho ko. And okay na ako dun. Okay, hindi ako marunong magturo. I was so shy, and I was content with that kind of ministry. But the Lord had other plans. So, whatever the Lord has given you, stay faithful at it. you don't know how God will use you in the future. Okay, so that's the second point. Third, serve the best master. Okay, notice I want to contrast these two, the faithful slave and the wicked slave. So notice here, as the master left for his journey, ano sabi dyan? What's the first word? Immediately. Okay, agad-agad. Without delay. He went ahead and did. Pag-alis pa lang ng master niya. Okay, they knew what was expected of them and ginawa nila right away, without delay. Okay, in their heart of hearts, they wanted to please their master. And the fruit of their labor was profitable to their master. Okay, they cared for their master. So yun yung faithful slaves. Contrast that, or compare that to this. And the one also who had received the 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man. Okay? Reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid. And then went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. This is the lesson. Their view of the master determined how they live. Yung pagkakalala nila sa master nila. It determined how they lived, how they worked, what they strove for in life, yung pursuits nila, and even their destiny. Even their destiny. And it's the same. It's the same for us. It's also true for us. The way we view God, yung pagkakilala nyo sa Diyos, will determine how you live, how you work, your pursuits in life, your values in life, and even your destiny. So to further illustrate that, I want to call in a brother to share a testimony on what happens when we've come to know this master in our lives. Let's welcome Edward Dussel.
Okay. Before the new year of 2012, I received an invitation from one of our level 2 managers to be part of their team. So during that time, supervisor ako ng level 1 for 2 years, and I was very comfortable with my position that time. This role that was offered to me required deeper technical skills, and I was really afraid that I was not equipped for the position. Accepting the offer would also mean giving up my privilege as a supervisor and doing a job that is not familiar to me. This new position would also take me out of my comfort zone. For the very first time in my life, I prayed hard to the Lord before moving forward with anything. I also consulted my discipleship group, leaders, my friends in the ministry, and of course, my parents. I also consult God then speak to me through Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. My D group leader encouraged me to set aside my fear and walk with Jesus by faith. Despite not being completely confident, I decided to leave my comfort zone and accept the position. So tinawagan ko agad yung manager no level 2 na tinatanggap ko na yung position. True enough, what I'm thinking, my first 2 years on the job were very hard for me. There were plenty of doubts in my head, and I was always asking myself if I made the right decision to move teams. I encountered a lot of failures, discouragement, and stress, but I stayed strong and always went back to God's Word whenever I felt down. Nakikita ko yung sarili ko dito na pumupunta sa pantry namin, pag may problem ako, just asking the Lord, di ko alam kung anong gagawin ko dito. I also remain more steadfast in prayer. Among other things that the Lord has put in my behavior towards my boss. In one scenario, nagkamali ako in the morning kasi yung boss ko, I thought that time, my boss is very strict. Yung boss ko, lahat na lang ng ginagawa ko mali. Wala na akong tama. So galing ako, bumili ako ng breakfast, pagbalik ko ng work, sobrang galit na galit ako dahil feeling ko, minomonitor niya na naman ako. So what I did is, nag-chat ako sa isang ka-team ko. So lahat ng frustrations ko, lahat ng galit ko during that morning, nilabas ko sa chat na yon. And then suddenly, nakita ko yung teammate ko, tumayo siya. And then tinawag niya ako, sabi niya, tignan mo yung chat mo. Yun pala, hindi ako nag-chat dun sa personal chat namin. Nag-chat ako dun sa team chat namin na nandun yung boss ko. So it was only 8 o'clock in the morning and gustong-gusto ko nang umuwi and my boss is sitting beside me. So I was really ganito sa desk ko, nakagano na lang ako. Gusto ko nang umuwi. And then yung boss ko, gumagana lang siya. Tapos tumayo siya, tinap niya ako sa likod. So that was very embarrassing for me and really, if I were you, make sure nag-chat kayo sa tamang chat group. So, those are the times that the Lord really humbled me. So during my yearly appraisal, I talked to Him and say sorry to Him, asking forgiveness. And since that day, our relationship improved. I was encouraged to be more humble and more careful, especially as I was always representing Christ in the workplace. In 2014, the Lord impressed in my heart to join the Big Ten prayer team. This became the beginning of my deeper walk as a Christian. My view about work was also changed at this time, especially as I was actively discipling others. In every challenge that I faced, my response was instantly to pray and ask the Lord for wisdom. I surrendered everything to Him and trusted Him that He is sovereign over everything. I learned that success at work starts when you acknowledge who your master is, none other than Jesus, and what is His will for you in the workplace. Aside from the prayer team, I also became more active in serving the Lord in different ministries. It was like I cannot have enough of Christ. The joy of having Him in my life is incomparable to the fleeting happiness of receiving worldly success in the form of honor, position, and money. In 2015, the Lord unexpectedly blessed me with a promotion. Imagine yung boss na narong chat ako, yung pa yung nagbigay sa akin ng promotion. I was also chosen our company's representative to train our French colleague in Paris, which hindi nangyayari sa buhay ko since 2004 na nag-work na ako. God has also allowed me to be a manager in 2016 na hindi ko rin in-expect na mangyayari. After building my character with the team that at first I hesitantly joined years before. It's been a good 2 years and never once did the Lord allow me to be in luck. He was always faithful even when I wasn't. In all of this, I have discovered that true success at work can only be obtained when one seeks Jesus daily, focuses his eyes on Him, and works according to His leading always. I also learned that to truly be successful, one must overcome the fear of failure. I was tempted to play it safe, but I went by God's leading to move forward and glorify Him by delving into more difficult tasks at work. I also realized that although people cannot be equal in skill or capacity, they can be equal in effort and love for the task at hand. It took me more time to familiarize myself with certain tasks, but I persevered and learned from experience. The difficulties that I encountered before has molded me to be the best boss that I can be to my team. I strive daily to do my best for them as I serve the best boss ever, who is Jesus, who was my best interest at heart. Not only is God a loving Father, He is also a good, reasonable, and gracious Master. In the end, it would not matter to Him how successful we would become compared to other people. All that He asks is that we be faithful in what He asks for us. To God be all the glory. Thank you.
Let me describe to you God from this parable. You know, masters in those days, they're not obliged to thank their slaves for doing their jobs. Hindi kailangan. Slaves are expected to do their jobs. Otherwise, they would be beaten or sent back to the slave market kung ayaw sila ng boss niya. But this master, he thanked his slaves. This is what God is like. In the story, he entrusted a huge amount of money to his slaves. 20 years worth of wages for the 1 talent person. The master knew his slaves. He gave according to their ability. Ibig sabihin, the slaves were capable. It wasn't like wala silang alam. He knew where to give the talents. In other words, he did not set them up for failure. That's what God is like. It says he was out for a long time. A long time. I'm not just talking about 20, 30, 40 years. It could be more. The slaves had ample time to work on what's been given them. They had ample time. The master was not unreasonable. That's what God is like. And in the end, sabi niya, you were faithful. I entrust you with more things. Enter into the joy of your master. Enter into the joy of your master. This word joy in Aramaic, it could mean, I think Jesus was using this word to mean festival. Festival. So what that means is the master probably gave a celebration in honor of the two faithful slaves na hindi naman niya kailangan gawin. Because it was just expected of them. But this master did. He threw a party. He threw a celebration for these two faithful slaves. That's what God is like. And this is the type of master that we serve. This is the type of master that we serve. My question is, do you know this master? Do you know him? Do you know him? Not just here. Not just because sabi lang ng small group leader nyo, not just because sabi lang ni Ikoy, but you know him here. And because you know him here, it has changed your life completely. Yung Christianity ninyo, hindi lang siya attendance. Attend a Bible study, attend small group. But yung Christianity ninyo has life in it, has transformation in it. You enjoy your walk with the Lord. You enjoy your time with God. That's what it's like to have a relationship with Jesus here, not just here. When during that time in the past when I was still clubbing, kasama ko si Ikoy minsan. Nung hindi pa siya Christian. The worst part of the night, I know some of you guys can relate with this. The worst part of the night for me, okay, was when you go out of the club, when you go out of the bar, and then may araw na. Yun yung pinakamasama, like, bad vibes. That joy that I was chasing then, the happiness that I was chasing then, the happiness that the world gives us, it is, sad to say, temporal. Alam niyo ibig sabihin ng temporal? It ends. Natatapos siya. After one weekend, it ends, and you have to wait for the next big thing, to capture that happiness again. But joy in heaven is a different story. It's a joy that never ends. And we have no idea what that looks like. Kasi lahat ng joy, lahat ng happiness natin natatapos. Pero joy in heaven, that is forever. Huwag kayong maniwala na walang forever. Joy in heaven is forever. It never ends. It's everlasting. Hindi na natatapos. Can you imagine everlasting bliss? And that is what the master is offering to his faithful slaves. Think about that. And last, as we close, I want to go back to the wicked slave. The wicked slave, he was in the house of the master. He was in the house. All this time, he was in the master's house. But all the time he was there, he never knew his master. And he missed out on all the goodness and the joy the master wanted to give his slaves. He missed out. And sa atin din, no? Ang prayer ko sa atin, sa lahat sa atin dito, is that no one of us, goes to attend Big Fridays, Sunday services again and again. You're in the Master's house, you're in God's house, and you completely miss the point. To be in the Master's house this whole time and not knowing the Master, that is the most tragic thing ever. That is the most tragic thing ever. Nandun na siya sa bahay ni God. And he missed it completely. Completely missed it. Let's think about that. Let's pray.